There's a new bill in New York that could force Chick-fil-A locations to open on Sundays. Lawmakers there want to keep food services at rest areas and transportation facilities open 7 days a week along Interstate 90. So far, no comment from Chick-fil-A on this legislation or whether there are lawmakers here in Georgia that might want to do the same thing.
Here is what Senator Lindsey Graham is calling war. He's called a lot of things war, but this time he's ready for war in defense of Chick-fil-A. New York has said they're going to try to make Chick-fil-A stay open on Sundays. So Senator Lindsey Graham has said, this is war. If this goes forward, I will be introducing legislation withholding federal funds from any city or state that requires Chick-fil-A to stay open on Sunday. The founders of Chick-fil-A made a decision early on to close on Sunday, consistent with their faith. For any government to try to reverse this decision flies in the face of who we are as Americans.
I think you know what time it is. So let's talk about the situation with Chick-fil-A. Now, you see worldly, secular power, religious power clashing heads. First of all, before we get into this topic, let me say this. If you are a Christian, you are not to align yourself with any of these groups. For if you do, you are just like the Israelites in times of old, who seek a helping hand from Egypt for salvation, and they did not succeed. If you seek a helping hand from a worldly religious group, or a worldly secular group, you will not succeed. It says, do not put your trust in princes or men who cannot save. You put your trust in God. So if you see something that has a Christian label or religious label, you are not to follow it thinking that everything it does is right or perfect. Or even if you see something wrong within it, you are not to identify yourself with a secular group that attacks it. So we are to put our trust in God. Prophetically, we are to see how things are unfolding as we are nearing the end. Now, with this said, let's talk about the situation with Chick-fil-A. Now, we know that Chick-fil-A, they are closed on Sundays. Why? Because the founder wanted the Sabbath to be kept on Sunday. Now, those of you who are Bible students, you know that the Sabbath is on the seventh day. You can read this in the book of Genesis chapter 2 verse 3. God sanctified the seventh day. He did not sanctify the first day. So those who are seeking truth, they understand that the seventh day Sabbath is the true Sabbath. Jesus rose on the first day. Jesus rose on the day after the Sabbath. He rested on the Sabbath day, and then he rose on the first day. So it's important to understand that the Sabbath cannot be changed. Man in history wanted to change the Sabbath. You read about Constantine in history. He looked to change the Sabbath from the seventh day of the week to the first day of the week, calling the seventh day Sabbath Jewish and then the first day Christian. He wanted all shops to be closed on Sunday. Now, this type of thing was prophesied in Daniel chapter 7 verse 25 when it talks about the man of sin.
Let us look carefully at this matter. The 10 Commandments make up the law of God. Sin is transgression of the law. So the man of sin means the man who transgresses against the law of God as he tries to modify it for his own glory. He wants to change God's time and change God's law for his glory. Now, what can we see in history that coincides with this? If we look very closely, we understand how Roman papal power looked to change the time, the set time God has made for the Sabbath. In the fourth commandment, the Roman papal power looks to change the Sabbath day to the Lord's Day, meaning that their Lord's Day is Sunday. Also, they remove the second commandment and they split the 10th commandment and make it into 2 commandments to make up for 10 commandments. This coincides with what we read in the book of Daniel, chapter 7, verse 25. A blasphemous kingdom looks to change God's law and God's set time for its own glory, and that is none other than Roman papal power. Papal Rome's mark for worship is on the first day of the week.
This still has its mark in Christianity. And a lot of people today, they want the Sabbath, the false Sabbath, to be reintroduced. Do you not realize today how many stores, many shops are closed on Sunday? It's important to understand that you see this revival for the false Sabbath to be reintroduced in society. False Sabbath is making its way into people's minds, into people's hearts.
In one of the most significant Supreme Court rulings on religious freedom. In the past 40 years, the High Court ruled in favor of a Christian mail carrier fighting for the right to not work on Sundays.
There's no question about, working on Sunday. We always refrain from working on the Lord's Day. I said, I feel like you're backing me into a corner, asking me to choose if I'm going to honor God or am I going to obey you as my authority, and my employer. I said, I mean no disrespect to you as my employer, but I have to choose God.
Remember how the postal worker wanted to keep his Sabbath on Sunday, and he took it up to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court took up the case, and he won. Don't you find it fascinating how again and again, some way you're having the false Sabbath being reintroduced? It's becoming popular. Secular side is trying to attack it, but the more it attacks it, the more it is actually exalted by the religious side.
In the book of Revelation, chapter 13, we read about two beasts. The second beast enforces worship. It enforces people to worship the image of the first beast. We first have to know what a beast is.
Beasts are kingdoms. You can read that in the book of Daniel. Now it says that this beast has two horns like a lamb, and it spoke as a dragon. Two horns as a lamb. It shows you that it professes to be a Christian nation. It professes to follow Christ. But it speaks like a dragon. It speaks like Satan. Satan looks to destroy the commandments of God. It is said that Satan is actually persecuting those who keep the commandments of God and the testimony of Jesus Christ. Let's put this all together now. Why do you think we are seeing over and over and over today here in America the false Sabbath being reintroduced? We are heading towards a time where it's going to be so popular that it is going to be enforced for everybody to worship and rest on Sunday. What is going on with Chick-fil-a right now? The attack coming from the secular side is actually feeding the popularity of false Sabbath rest to be put at the forefront of people's minds. Those who want to keep a true Sabbath rest, they're going to be persecuted in the time of the end before Jesus comes. Those who wants to keep all of the commandments of God out of love, they're going to be persecuted. This is just setting the stage for what is to happen.
The church is supposed to direct the government. The government is not supposed to direct the church. That is not how our founding fathers intended it. And I'm tired of this separation of church and state junk that's not in the Constitution. It was in a stinking letter, and it means nothing like what they say it does.
Hey everybody, back in New York, about to have lunch at Chick-fil-a in New York City. As I speak, the state of New York is trying to pass a law requiring Chick-fil-A to stay open on Sundays at state rest stops. This violates the Constitution. This violates the religious liberties of all of us, and the company called Chick-fil-A who tries to honor the Sabbath. Lend your voice to this cause. Stand up for Chick-fil-A. We need to have their back.